With less than a week and a half to go until the NHL draft, the NHL trade rumor mill is absolutely swirling, with some huge news regarding Brett Pesce and his linkage to the Buffalo Sabres and Edmonton Oilers, a potential CLAYTON KELLER trade with the St. Louis Blues, big news on Noah Hanifin, as well as the Canucks' future, and a lot more. But we're going to be breaking down every single trade rumor and all the news, so watch till the end for every single bit of it, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey trade rumor content just like this all throughout the offseason. You won't want to miss any updates. Now, first things first, I wanted to get this update in on Pierre-Luc Dubois. Jets in line for big changes. According to Mira 8 of The Athletic, Dubois has been open to a trade to another location outside of Montreal. One team that could be worth watching is the Los Angeles Kings. LA is one of Dubois' preferred destinations, an idea we explored last week, putting the Kings at the top of our list. The Kings have a wealth of less untouchable trade assets. Gabriel Vilardi could be a vocal point, a big, intelligent, skilled right-handed center whose 41 points in 63 games were a big step forward for a player thought to have been more in the tank. I don't think the Kings would move on from Quinton Byfield, as appears to be the Jets fan base's number one ask. Regardless of price or package built around a Vilardi type player, I think that a Dubois sign and trade could see the 24-year-old power forward shipped west and not east as previously thought. So some interesting more news there. We did see over the weekend with Pierre-Luc Dubois hanging out with Caulfield at the F1 Canadian Grand Prix. But it seems as though if he's going to go out west, LA might be the preferred destination at this point for Dubois. Also, some updates on the Erik Karlsson front as well. LeBrun also noted when discussing the future of defenseman Erik Karlsson with the Sharks, both parties are in agreement and it's time the Sharks and Karlsson move on and seek a new home for the blue liner. Representatives from Newport Sports who represent Karlsson and Sharks management recently met and concluded that they should explore the possibility of a trade. Karlsson, aiming to join a competitive team, recognizes that the Sharks are in a rebuilding phase and is happy enough to move on. However, the contract remains a significant factor. It raises questions about which team could absorb a sufficient portion of the deal or how much the Sharks are willing to retain. As LeBrun points out, it's important to note that Karlsson possesses a full no-move clause and will ultimately have a final say on whether he is comfortable with a potential trade partner. He did note that several teams have already expressed preliminary interest in recent days. So some more news on the Erik Karlsson front, even more likely that we will see a trade. And obviously that contract is going to be the big point of contention, but it's Erik Karlsson. He's about to win the Norris Trophy. I think teams will be fine, especially if there's salary retention involved. Now let's get into a big one here. Sabres and Oilers looking at Brett Pesce. We talked about before Pesce being on the block. Now it looks like we have some specific teams interested on the Canes blue liner. According to TSN's Pierre LeBrun, the Hurricanes have expressed their intention to re-sign defenseman Brett Pesce, whose contract is set to expire at the end of the 2023-24 season. However, if both parties fail to reach an agreement, in an effort to get the highest return possible, the Hurricanes are prepared to trade Pesce during the upcoming summer. Pesce is currently in the last year of a 6-year contract he signed in 2017, which carries a $4 million cap hit for the 2023 season and does not include any trade protection. The Buffalo Sabres have already shown interest in acquiring the talented defenseman. In the meantime, Lance Lysowski of the Buffalo News reported that the Sabres are trying to work out extensions with franchise defenseman Dahlin as well as Owen Power. He writes that a source familiar with the situation says the agreements haven't been reached, but adds there's excitement and optimism on both sides to get the deals done. Darren Dreger added that the Oilers have also expressed interest in Pesce. They are among the teams actively seeking to bolster their defensive lineup with another top 4 defenseman. However, for Edmonton, the challenge lies in managing their financial constraints and creating enough salary cap space. In addition to addressing their defensive needs, the Oilers are also looking to add a competitive forward at a reasonable price, such as Connor Brown. As a result, it is possible that players like Cody Ceci, Fogle, Yamamoto, and potentially others could be involved in trade discussions. Now, Buffalo being involved in a Brett Pesce deal would make a ton of sense. You look at their right side with Pesce being a right D, and there is a definite need to add here, especially onto that top 4. I mean, LaBouche can be fine at points. Yoki Haru could be fine at points, but this Sabres defense desperately needs another bolstered addition, and to me, it has to come within trade, and especially considering Pesce's deal at a relatively low cost and the Sabres' wealth of cap space and wealth of top prospects, to to me, the Sabres make a lot of sense here, and especially alongside a player like Dahlin, I think Pesce could be brilliant. But that's the type of defensive add they could desperately use, and again, when you look at their defense, they're in a position to add in a lot of different ways. You just see the players they got, not a lot signed long-term, especially with Dahlin and Power needing new deals, but there's not a ton of commitment there. And to me, I think we could see a trade there, maybe even involving one of their D. Maybe we see a player, Jokiharju, going to Carolina's side. But to me, Pesce to Buffalo would make a ton of sense. And again, when you look at their situation, they got $16 million in projected cap space. They'll be pretty fine this offseason, and adding on to a Pesce would be the exact move they need to make. If they can add another goaltender too, that would be stellar. Now, just like the Sabres, on paper, on defense, Pesce would make a lot of sense there too. You look at that right side, and Evan Bouchard's there, he's solid, but if Cece's likely going to get moved, that's him gone. Desharnais, who really knows the role he plays next year, but Pesce would have top pairing minutes if he really wanted to in Edmonton, especially in a more defensive role compared to a player like Evan Bouchard. But of course, compared to Buffalo, the cap space is a problem. They do have $5 million in cap space, so if they do nothing else this offseason, they could fit Pesce. The problem is you do have big RFAs like Ryan McLeod, Klim Kostin, as well as Evan Bouchard, who we mentioned before. So that cap space is going to really just shrink up quickly. And absolutely, we'll see even more than that $5 million just used on the RFAs already. So that's a situation where for Edmonton, they're in a really tough spot here. But of course, they got contracts they can move. Cody Cece, if you can get rid of that, would be huge. And players like Kayla Yamamoto have already been mentioned. They would still, I think, have to trade somebody else like a Fogle to really make it work, but Pesce in Edmonton would be a huge add of that defense, and you of course have the addition of Ekholm from this last trade deadline, and that defense I think would be still continuing to get solidified, and Pesce could bring that great puck moving element. They don't have a lot on that defense besides really Evan Bouchard and a little bit of Darren Elners and a little bit of Matthias Ekholm, but it would really create that two-way balance throughout that top four. Now we go on to another big-time defenseman involved in trade rumors with Noah Hanifin not likely to re-sign with the Calgary Flames. According to reports from both Pierre-LeBrun of The Athletic and Elliotte Friedman, it appears that Calgary Flames defenseman Noah Hanifin is unlikely to sign a contract extension with the team, and a trade is probable. Hanifin has expressed his lack of interest in re-signing with the Flames, signaling the likelihood of a move. It is not clear what kind of return the Flames will be seeking and if they'll prioritize picks and prospects or look for a trade that brings back a competitive player. Friedman said on a recent episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast, "I've heard there is going to be a lot of interest in him. I think they are going to be able to make a good deal here." And then we see below that as well, Hanifin is currently in the final year of his contract, which carries a cap hit of $4.95 million. He will become an unrestricted free agent in 2024. With his impressive attributes as a 6'3" defenseman who possesses strong skating ability at just 26 years old, Hanifin could be an attractive addition for many teams. In the past season, he recorded 38 points, and in his previous campaign, a career high of 48 points. Notably, his performance over the last 3 seasons has been outstanding, particularly highlighted by an exceptional 2022 season. And then goes on to say, Hanifin is one of the several players who will be UFAs in 2024, including Lindholm, Toffoli, Backlund, Tanev, and Zadorov. So that offseason, we talked about it before with the Lindholm rumors as well as the Toffoli rumors, but just so much in that 2024 offseason to worry about if you're Calgary. So many guys that could potentially walk. And again, this is another reason why I think for the Flames, it might just be better again long-term to just go in that full rebuilding direction. But Hanifin will be a really interesting one, obviously an American, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly a move might be made here. But even though Hanifin, I think, had a little bit of a down year, especially defensively this last season, offensively, he was still generating a lot, and in Suter's system just continued to kind of be sterilized. It was a weird situation there, but I think Hanifin will have a bounce back year next year if he is still Calgary. I could see the situation, though, escalating around the draft, though, and the Flames want to get a bunch of picks back if that's what they end up going for. But for the Flames, it'll be interesting because there's so many different options in a Hanifin trade. Of course, with his relatively low cap hit at a $4.95 million cap hit, I feel like a lot of teams are going to be out there already going after him, seeking him out, trying to make a trade happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in the next couple of weeks, honestly. One team that I think could really make a lot of sense if the Flames are willing to trade within the division is the Vancouver Canucks. We know they're looking for defense. They're looking for size on that defense as well. Hanifin does bring that at 6'3", and as a left D, I mean, he could kind of be in a perfect spot there right behind Quinn Hughes. Maybe he plays with a player like Philip Hronek, and that could work pretty well. But I feel like for the Canucks, they're going to make a big move on defense. It's just a matter of who. Hanifin, though, again, with that relatively low cap hit, I think will be extremely desirable by Vancouver. And there's a few players I think they could end up shipping to Calgary. Maybe we see a little bit of retention on a Connor Garland, perhaps, or maybe they send a player like Anthony Beauvillier. Who knows? There's a lot of options, though, for these teams to deal if, again, they're comfortable trading within the division. Also, with Elliotte Friedman's recent 32 thoughts coming out, we have some more Canucks news as well that I wanted to touch on here. From Friedman, the Canucks want to compete for the playoffs next year. Buyout was the best move for OEL and the team, and OEL will have free agency options. And the Panthers' example may have emboldened Vancouver to think, just get in and anything can happen. And going through everything in that 32 Thoughts podcast, it was pretty wild again, talking about that Panthers and situation and their run to the Cup final. And Friedman kind of insinuating again, the Canucks might be wanting to go in that direction of just get in the playoffs, just get in that wild card, and the stars that the Canucks have will take them further, which is a bold way to think about things. But again, it just shows I think there's going to be a lot more moves in this year's free agency, a lot of moves in this year's offseason for the Canucks, and they're going to weaponize the cap space they have. And it'll just be a situation where even though Vancouver probably should be a little bit more restrained, have a little bit more restraints, I feel like they'll make some big moves. Of course, we just talked about Noah Hanifin. I can absolutely see that being a part of things. There has to be some more moves on D if they even think they're going to be competitive for the playoffs, because right now it's just not cutting it. I mean, they just do not have the manpower, especially if they're going to trade a player like Tyler Myers. There's going to be some heavy roster construction with this Canucks team, so watch out for that this offseason. Also, for the last thing I want to talk about here is the Clayton Keller to St. Louis rumors, and I got my own quote here from the 32 Thoughts podcast talking about Clayton Keller, the Blues, their offseason strategy, and what we might see as well over the next few weeks. And Elliotte Friedman said this: St. Louis has made a lot of noise. Haven't done anything major yet, though. And according to Elliotte Friedman's source and what he said, you would be foolish to think that they won't be doing something. If Keller becomes available, that's a natural match, goes on to say, because of him being from St. Louis and the Blues' interest in him. And there's no way they're sticking with the status quo. And that is a huge quote, because we know St. Louis is likely going to be a little bit active, especially in free agency. We'll see what they do there. But up front, it seems like there might be some massive changes, and Clayton Keller being out of that forward group will be wild. And of course, with the Blues, they have 3 first-round picks in this 2023 NHL draft, and if Clayton Keller is moved to St. Louis, then you would absolutely see at least 2 of those first-rounders, maybe a top prospector. Likely, in my opinion, more likely is all 3 of those first-rounders move for Clayton Keller, especially if there's going to be a Clayton Keller trade to St. Louis, a place where he's almost guaranteed to stay, in my opinion, with, of course, it being his childhood team and the way in the situation he grew up in. There's kind of no way, in my opinion, that they would have him walk. So you would guarantee Clayton Keller for the future, which for St. Louis would be just changing everything about that forward group in a great way. To me, that could be worth 3 first-round picks, especially considering the Stars and the Leafs ones aren't incredibly good. But at the same time, it'll be a really interesting situation here. If St. Louis is able to land Clayton Keller, you will see a lot of picks going back. And you see, of course, with Arizona and the picks they have over the next few years, imagine if they add 3 more first-round picks to this year's draft. They would have 5 first-round picks this year. They would have 4 third-round picks this year. And then in 2024, they would have, and both 2024 and 2025, they'd have 4 second-round picks. In 2024, they'd have 3 third-round picks. The draft cupboard would be actually insane. It's almost too many prospects. There's not going to be enough room for these guys. But if they were able to make a Clayton Keller trade happen, that would be incredible. And for the Coyotes, it would almost guarantee they at some point have the best prospect pool in the NHL, right? But if Clayton Keller does become available, the Blues will be on top of things there. I think the Sens would also be pretty high up, maybe the Detroit Red Wings as well. A lot of interest would be in on Keller, just with the magnitude and the skill set that he has. There's going to be a ton of teams interested in him, as there should be. I mean, this can be a franchise-changing offensive player, and nobody should be fooling around with that. I mean, 3 first-round picks, honestly, for Keller, makes sense. For the player that he is, we could see a lot going back to Arizona and a massive haul if they want to make a trade happen. But that's it for the NHL Trade Rumors today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Comment down below all your thoughts on the Trade Rumors today. And, of course, share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Get the Trade Rumors out to them. And click on this card for all my Trade Rumor content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I hope you have a great day. And goodbye.